Mr. Hardin, your witness, and now we'll start the clock.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Hardin, that saved you some time on the clock by resolving some of those issues, so you got your extra 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Something just came up at the well, how do we pronounce your name by your preference? We've said Cammack, we've said Cammack.
Cammack.
Cammack, all right, thank you. Mr. Cammack, I have several documents I want to go over with you. I first want to show you and ask you to look on that hard copy you have there. Do you have a hard copy of 649 with you up there?
Let me take a look. Yes, sir.
All right. And I want you to look at that 649 and without testifying as to the contents yet, tell me if that is a document that was prepared by you.
No, sir.
All right. Who was it prepared by?
This document was prepared by Michael Wynn.
By Michael Wynn?
Yes, sir.
And would you tell us the circumstances real quickly as to how you got that document from Michael Wynn?
This was emailed to me.
Emailed to you? Did you ask for it?
No, sir. This was unprompted.
All right. And then in this particular document, it's still not in evidence. I have a couple more questions for you.
Yes, sir.
When you received that from Michael Wynn.
Mr. Hardin,
Yes,
excuse
sir.
me. So there was an objection on 649?
Yes, sir. I haven't asked him questions about the content yet for that reason.
Because I'm going to sustain the objection on 649.
But I understood at the bench you wanted us to extend a predicate if we were going to try to overcome it. That's all I'm trying to do. But it's not in, you understand as a lawyer, it's not in evidence. Objection's been made, preliminary sustained. I'm being allowed to ask you a few more questions about it without describing the contents.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Now, when this particular document, and notice here, you forwarded that document to whom?
I sent this document to Mr. Paxton.
All right. And in the case of Mr. Paxton, when you sent it to him, is this an example of how you kept him informed of things that were being done?
Yes, sir. This was one of the ways.
All right. And this particular document, then, did you, that you got from Mr. Wynn, did you use it as a basis to prepare any documents yourself?
No, sir.
All right. Did you do anything with this document?
No, sir.
So, is it your testimony, you received this document from Mr. Wynn, you passed it on to the Attorney General. Did you and the Attorney General ever discuss this document?
No, sir.
Did you ever have any personal or over-the-phone contact with the Attorney General about this document?
Yes, sir.
All right, when was that?
It would have been around the time that I received this on this 9/16 date, but I don't recall the exact date that I spoke with him.
Can you discuss that conversation without referring to the contents internally of this document?
Yes, just like in other things that I forwarded to Mr. Paxton, if I had a conversation about it, I would have said, yes, sir, I sent you over something that I got from Michael Wynn or Nate Paul, or Michael Wynn, actually.
Did you represent Mr. Paxton personally, individually?
I'm sorry, could you?
Did you ever consider yourself Mr. Ken Paxton's personal lawyer?
No, sir.
All right. And at that time, had you been retained by, I believe you testified, the Attorney General's office, is that correct? Or whom did you think you had been hired by?
The Office of the Attorney General.
Okay, all right. So now, was anything with this document done in your preparation for any of the things you did?
No, I believe I skim-read this document and just sent it on to Mr. Paxton.
Without ever discussing it with him or anything?
Just discussing that I'd sent him over what this document is, but not going into any detail about what was in this document.
And is this a fairly typical process you had through this whole representation during the investigation?
The process of forwarding him emails and maybe discussing things with him?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. And were you regularly getting emails from Mr. Wynn that you would just pass on to the Attorney General?
I don't know about regularly. I would just have to look at the emails that,
Let me change the word regularly. Then would you frequently pass on to the Attorney General documents or emails you were getting from Mr. Wynn?
I had sent him some things. I just don't recall what those specific documents were. So I don't know if I can say that I frequently did it, but I did send him things and this is one example of it.
All right. And then let me ask it another way finally. That's all I have on this. Did you attempt throughout your representation or throughout your retention as investigator, try to keep the Attorney General updated on all of your activities?
Yes, sir.
All right. Your Honor, I'll ask the court to reconsider the exclusion of 649. There's a basis here. There's no privilege from anyone. There is on this document, the business record had been filed with this. It's covered by a business record. There is no statement here by anyone other than Michael Wynn. It is not hearsay, though, because he's not making a statement that's being forwarded somebody else's statement. And so for all kinds of reasons, I respectfully request that this be admitted.
May I speak with Mr. Cammack, sorry, Brandon Cammack, on the predicate question, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Cammack, if you could look at the top of House Manager's Exhibit 649, and I think the fourth line down regarding the subject, it says, does it not, discovery plan dash work product?
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming based upon your designating the document with that description that you considered this to be part of the work product that you were performing in your role as an outside lawyer for the Attorney General's office. Correct?
Yes, sir.
You acted like that was a trick question. It wasn't meant to be.
Okay.
So would you agree with me, Mr. Cammack, that the act of reviewing it and then forwarding it was consistent with your description at the top of being work product? Agreed?
Yes, sir.
So it would be covered by the work product privilege, Mr. President.
So your objection is work product?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, the work product privilege on this document belongs to this witness and witness alone. And the question would become, if he considers it his work product, he's produced it to us, which waives his work product. And I suspect he would concur again that he's not claiming the work product, and he's the only one in this equation that has the right to, and he's provided it to us voluntarily through this production. So it's waived, even if he did. But
With respect, I don't agree with the last.
I've never heard of a third party waiving somebody else's work product privilege.
I'm simply directing the witness to answer the question, which is, it was sent pursuant to, I'm sorry. Brandon, are you okay on water? You good?
Yes, sir.
We will sustain the objection on hearsay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cammack, did Michael Wynn, what is your testimony as to whether or not he regularly or frequently throughout this kept providing you information to assist you in your investigation? Did he?
He did send me information throughout the course of this investigation.
Many times was it unsolicited?
Towards the end, it was.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And would he send you things that were to be, that gave you names that he was trying to get you to issue grand jury subpoenas for?
Objection leading.
That's not leading. That question was, would he do so-and-so? He can answer yes or no. It doesn't tell him which answer to give.
Overruled.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you?
Yeah. Would he? Did he send you things did he give you names that he was trying to get you to issue grand jury subpoenas for?
No, sir. He gave me names in an Excel spreadsheet that I think we discussed, but it was never, these are the people that you need to.
But Mr. Cammack, did he also?
Excuse me, may the witness be allowed to finish answering the question?
Certainly. I thought you were through. Were you through?
Are
Yes,
you
sir,
through,
I'm
Mr. Cammack?
Pardon me?
Yes, Judge. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, what all the kind of information was Mr. Wynn regularly providing you, if he was?
I'm so sorry.
Was he regularly providing you information?
Yes.
And what type of information was he providing you?
There were a couple Excel spreadsheets that he had forwarded to me that had the names and demographic information of individuals as they related to the referral that I got. There was a timeline that I was given early on. There was a memo that was provided to me, like a prosecution memo. There was, and as I sit here right now, I can't think of anything else.
Would you look at 650 up there, please?
Yes, sir.
All right. You've got 649 already. We talked about that, correct? The contents are not in evidence. We talked about that, did we not?
Exhibit 649, yes, sir. We talked about it.
And now you've got 650 in front of you.
Yes, sir.
You just mentioned a prosecution memo that he provided you?
Yes, sir.
And what was the purpose of him giving you a prosecution memo?
Objection, conjecture, and speculation.
Sustained. Just rephrase it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. What was the stated purpose of him giving you a prosecution memo?
That was also an unprompted email to me with this prosecution memo.
Were all of these things he were provided designed to help your investigation of the allegations of Mr. Paul?
The information that he gave me was helpful to my understanding of what the investigation was about and what was to be done.
Yes. And of course, you were conducting an investigation. Your view, you've mentioned before, was that Mr. Paul was your sort of complaining witness as a prosecutor in your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were these different things that Mr. Wynn was providing you, were they intended to help you in your investigation of the complaint that was filed by Mr. Paul?
They were helpful to the investigation. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know what, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for Mr. Wynn about what the intention was, but they were helpful.
Well, Mr. Wynn was representing Mr. Paul, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
We can kind of agree, can't we, that he's not going to be providing things to you that are harmful to Mr. Paul? Can't we agree on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So would you agree with me as you think about it, that Mr. Wynn was frequently providing you with information that was potentially helpful to Mr. Paul's complaint that you were investigating?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Were you getting information regularly from Mr. Wynn? Number one, were you?
Yes, sir.
And was that information designed to help you in investigating Mr. Paul's complaint?
It was helpful.
All right. You know it was helpful then, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did Mr. Wynn provide you a prosecution memo for you to adapt into one of your own?
He provided the prosecution memo to me unprompted, but that was kind of my jump-off point for the investigative report that I was going to ultimately put together and turn back into the Attorney General's office.
Yes, sir. He actually, did he not, provided you a prosecution memo that is 650 that was designed for you to help write your report at the end of the investigation. Is that a fair statement?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What was the purpose of this prosecution memo?
I viewed it as giving me information about everything that had happened. More detailed information than just the timeline that I got initially at the first meeting.
Yes, sir. It was all information from the perspective of Mr. Paul, was it not?
Objection, leading.
I'll ask you another way. Was this information,
Continue.
was this information offered to you for help, Mr. Paul?
Conjecture and speculation. You can't know what the purpose of it was.
I'll overrule.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
You can answer the question. Was this information provided to you to help Mr. Paul or to harm Mr. Paul?
It was helpful. It was helpful from my perspective to be able to wrap my mind around all of the different moving parts within that investigation.
All right, sir. I'm going to refer you to Exhibit 650 in front of you. You have it?
Yes, sir.
It's not in evidence yet. But is this a email sent that you got from Mr. Wynn, or is this an email you created yourself?
This is an email that I created myself, and an email that I sent to Mr. Paxton.
All right, was this email, is this the prosecution memo we've been talking about?
Yes, sir.
And was the prosecution memo prepared by you?
This document was, yes.
All right. And did you use as a basis for this a prosecution memo proposed by Mr. Wynn that he sent you?
Yes, sir.
And then did you forward it on to the Attorney General?
I didn't forward Mr. Wynn's memo. I created my own.
All right.
And then forwarded it on.
So did you forward 650 to the Attorney General?
Yes, sir.
As far back as the date of 9/13, is that correct?
Yes, sir, 9/13.
Now, you're not here today claiming any type of privilege on this document, are you? Did you produce it to us?
Excuse me, those are two different questions.
Down at the bottom, I'd ask you to look and see if you see your name.
Could you repeat
Third
the
question.
Yes, did you produce this document to us?
I believe my counsel did.
Yes, your counsel did. I know. In total openness, you provided us about 2,000 documents, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
It was a bunch, right? And 650 is one of those documents you provided us, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you weren't claiming work product privilege at that time or anything, were you?
My lawyers are the ones who produced all of it. I didn't make any claim one way or the other with respect to privilege.
Right, to both sides, correct?
Correct.
All right. So my question to you is this a document you prepared and just forwarded to the Attorney General for his information?
Yes.
Did you ever discuss this document with him?
I did.
When?
I believe it was around the time either just before or just after I had prepared this. I spoke with him about it to let him know that I had sent it.
That you intended what? To prepare a prosecution memo?
Yes, that I had sent this
To him?
to him.
Did you discuss the contents with him at that time?
I did briefly, just to let him know that I had sent this over here and then it had some ideas about the case.
All right. And so was this designed to let him know that you were working on the case and this is where you were in the middle of September?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, again, Your Honor, I move to introduce Exhibit 650.
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, there are about 3 different reasons it's not.
Overruled.
All right. Now,
The exhibit is admitted to
Thank
evidence,
you, Your Honor.
650.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I said overruled. 650 has been admitted to
Thank you.
evidence.
now, if we go over to the Bait Stamp 1986 of Cammack, Stacy. All right. Up at the top, number 6 says establishing a predicate to issue legal process. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And it has a list of names there. Where did you get those names?
I got these names from Michael Wynn.
All right. And if we go over to the first page of it, Stacy, can you tell us where you got this heading and the date, what it is, the factual summary, where it says a more detailed chronology is attached to this memorandum? Did you get the information that you used as a basis of that from Mr. Wynn?
Yes, sir, from that original prosecution memo.
All right. So would it be a fair statement that everything you prepared in this document, that the research and writing of it was information provided by Mr. Paul or Mr. Wynn?
So, yes.
All right, I'll let you explain. You said so I want to give you an opportunity if you want to explain that.
Sure. Well, the prosecution memo that I got initially from Mr. Wynn, I'd reached out to him about it after I'd spoken with Mr. Paxton about sending it to him, and as lawyers, I checked with him. I said, I'm going to prepare this and send it over. Would it be okay if I use some of the things that you put in here, statutes, and reviewed some of the case law that was in there? So, he said, no problem, have at it. So I used that as the basis of what was going to ultimately be an investigative report to turn in at the end.
All right, I'm going to show you what is a new exhibit marked 696.
696?
I don't think you have it up there. I want to ask you just to look at this document, first of all, and see if you recognize it. Don't testify about the contents or anything. Okay?
Mr. Hardin, I don't have 696.
No, sir, it's a proposed new exhibit.
Okay.
I don't either.
And my question is simply, do you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify what it is without talking about the internal contents?
This is an email from Michael Wynn, dated 9/25/2020, with what appears to be like a Word document attached to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what did you do with that document? If anything.
With it is I read it and I kind of just one ear out the other with it.
All right. Now, is that additional information Mr. Wynn prepared for you?
Yes, sir.
And without going into the contents of the documents, what was the purpose of that particular document?
This document appears to be a list of individuals to approach about an interview.
All right. So let me ask you this. May I have it back?
Sure.
I move to introduce 696.
Objection, hearsay.
Hearsay, we already have a record, a business records affidavit, which addresses whether the reliability of it. It is not a statement. It is a suggestion to this man by a co-conspirator in this case, not a co-conspirator with him, but a co-conspirator with the Attorney General and Mr. Paul, as they keep feeding this information in pursuit of their conspiracy. That's the reason we offer it.
And therein lies the problem. Mr. Hardin suggests as they keep feeding the information. There is zero evidence that Ken Paxton saw this document, participated in this document, created this document before it was sent by Mr. Wynn to Mr. Cammack. And for Mr. Hardin to suggest there's not a statement is belied on the face of the document. Look at the very
The
first
objection
page.
is sustained.
All right, may
As
I
to hearsay.
just for the record add one thing. Mr. Paxton doesn't have to have seen this if there's an actual conspiracy going on. It only needs to be somebody that is a member of that conspiracy. Any overt actor making any statement like that. I just want that in the record, Your Honor. I certainly don't want to quarrel with you.
Yeah. We sustained it to hearsay.
All right, thank you, Judge. Now, let's move forward. You are going to issue grand jury subpoenas, were you not? I
Yes,
said
sir.
are, but you were. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in preparing those grand jury subpoenas, I think we testified you used the assistance of the AG's office or the district attorney's office to get the forms prepared, correct?
That's correct.
Did anybody in the district attorney's office work with you or anything as to the content or the people they would be sent to or the wording or anything like that?
I believe I received a form from them in an email, like a sample form. That's the only thing that I received back from them as far as assistance goes.
So with what you said, what you received from them, what I'm really asking is, did any lawyer or anyone working on behalf of the content, did anybody try to talk to you about the content or the people to subpoena or anything like that?
No, sir.
All right. Was their duty simply aiding you to get the grand jury subpoena before a judge to sign?
Yes, sir. They facilitated.
Did you discuss with anybody in the district attorney's office anything about who you wanted to subpoena or anything like that? Or did you simply provide them the information, they helped you with format, and presented it to a judge for you?
Yes, sir. So I just emailed the application for the subpoenas. They did not offer any assistance or make any comments or anything about the contents.
Was there anyone in the Attorney General's office aiding you at all in terms of investigating this complaint of Mr. Fall?
Objection, conjecture, and speculation.
Sustained.
All right. Now, at the end of the time, when you issue these subpoenas, let's go to the dates and times you did it.
Yes, sir.
Did you issue some subpoenas originally by email? You got your billing record up there?
Yes, sir. I'm looking at the...
And your records or your memories show you when you did it? When did you first start serving these subpoenas?
Would have been September 25th, 2020.
Pardon me?
It would have been September 25th, 2020.
All right. And then after you sent, do you remember how many of those you sent out by email?
It was roughly 35 to 40, somewhere in there.
All right. And then after you sent out some by email, then did you reserve some that you were going to serve and serve personally?
I think there were a few that I was going to serve personally for the second referral.
For the second one?
Yes, sir.
So why did you decide to send email for the emails on Mr. Paul's complaint, but decide to serve personally those in the second referral?
Because when can I explain myself?
Sure.
So I have this list that I'm given of individuals that are subject to either the first or second referral. I get that from Michael Wynn. And the grand jury subpoenas were going to go out for email address, like to and from, the email log, to, from, what time, around the time that this search had taken place. And then there were also phone numbers to see if any contacts had been made around that time between cell phone numbers. So I say all that to say this: most of the people who were on this list either had a Gmail account or a Hotmail or a Microsoft account. So rather than piecemeal, let me get a couple subpoenas here, there was no intention of it to be this big shock value of sending out so many subpoenas. It was like, let me get all this information together, I will go through it and then go from there. And with respect to those that I emailed out, that's the way I looked it up. I went and looked that up. Like, okay, how does Microsoft receive a subpoena? Well, you can fax or email it. With respect to the banks that I've served those subpoenas on, I just did it in person.
Well, and then you notice you sent out, did you not, on the emails you did that you were subpoenaing personal cell phones records? Did you send that out by email?
Those were by email,
Yeah.
the cell phone records.
So were you sending out subpoenas for personal phone records of law enforcement officers, state and federal?
I'd have to look back, but I believe some of them were.
And were you did you even send out subpoena for the cell phone records of somebody who worked as a deputy for a federal magistrate? A courtroom deputy?
I would have to look, I believe so.
Okay. And then you don't happen to recall on the top of your mind right now who all you did, correct?
I do not, sir.
Okay, that's all right. So then, when you send out these different subpoenas, did you have any knowledge one way or the other that some of the people that you were sending subpoenas to were opposing counsel to Mr. Paul in civil litigation? Did you know that?
No, sir.
All right. If you had known that, would you have done it?
No.
All right. Who did you get the list from as to who subpoenaed?
I got the list from Michael Wynn and Nate Paul.
So is it an accurate statement to say that you issued grand jury subpoenas on behalf of the person that was under a state charges? You issued subpoenas to his agency, the Securities Board.
Objection, assuming facts not in evidence.
Did you realize that? That's really my question. Let me rephrase
Sustain.
it. Thank you, Judge. Let me put it this way. First person out of the box in that prosecution memo we went over is Mr. Ronnie Saban, right? Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you knew him as one of the agents involved in the search, correct?
That's correct.
Were you aware that he was an employee of the Securities Board and was involved in the criminal case where charges were filed and pending at this moment still against the Attorney General?
Objection, assume facts not in evidence.
Did you know that? That's all I'm asking.
Sustained.
Were you aware of what his role was?
Of the gentleman, I think you said Ronnie Saban?
Yes.
No, sir.
All
I
right.
just only knew him as one of the individuals who had searched Mr. Paul's residence.
Fine. All right. And then different other people. Did you know that Mr. Ray Chester, who was on your list, was opposing counsel in a lawsuit with the Mitty Foundation? Just did you know?
No.
All right. So did Mr. Wynn provide you these names without informing you that part of what they were seeking was information with people that were either in litigation against the Attorney General, namely the criminal charge pending, or in litigation against Mr. Paul,
Okay,
namely the
I'm
Mitty
sorry.
Foundation?
I'm
Were
sorry.
you aware of any of that?
Multifarious, assuming facts not in evidence.
It's all in evidence.
No, it's not, and it's multifarious.
We have heard, well, excuse me, let me let the court rule.
Overruled.
Thank you very much. Were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, could you please rephrase that question?
So did Mr. Wynn provide you these names without informing you that part of whatever they were seeking was information with people who were either in litigation against the Attorney General, namely the criminal charge pending, or in litigation against Mr. Paul in the Mitty Foundation litigation? Did he inform you of that?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, then you move on to the subpoenas that you were going to serve personally. And is it your testimony that those subpoenas were based on the second referral that Mr. Paul had filed originally with the DA's office on September the 23rd?
Those were for the second referral.
All
Yes,
right.
sir. Yes, sir.
And that's the referral that you had said you got on the 24th, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, at the time you sent out these subpoenas the previous week, after you sent them out and the judge signed them and they were ready to be sent out and you sent them out into the world of the internet, did you inform the Attorney General?
I did.
How did you inform him?
I believe I sent him an email.
All right. Did you send him an email at any time letting him know which people you were subpoenaing?
No.
All right.
I don't think I individually named.
You need to stay with the microphone, please.
I don't believe I individually named each person, but I
All right.
just don't recall that.
Now, when you went out to serve the subpoenas in person, what dates did you do it and how did you do it?
That would have been on September the 29th of 2020.
September the 29th?
Yes, sir.
All right. And had you made arrangements with Mr. Wynn for him to go on these services of subpoenas with you?
So he was insistent on going.
What did he, I mean, how long had he been insistent talking to you about wanting to go with you?
Just maybe a day or so. I told them, I was informing them of what I was going to do to serve, I was going to go drop off the subpoenas. And he was insistent on going, and I was like, no, you don't really need to do that. I didn't really think it was appropriate. But he said, I'm Nate Paul's lawyer, and it's important for me to be there in case they ask you any questions about his case or anything that's going on. And so, I felt a little pressure to say, okay, and he rode along with me.
Share with us why you felt pressure to accede to that.
I think just kind of pressure to perform. I wanted to do a good job, and I frankly trusted Michael.
Right. Did he inform you there was a statute prohibiting an interested party from serving subpoenas?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. And then, so when you made arrangements to go with him, where did you first meet up?
I forgot the hotel I was staying at down here, and he was at a hotel, and I just picked him up and we went.
What day of the week was it? 28th was a Monday, was it not?
I don't know. It was September 29th.
September 29th. I don't think anybody's going to argue if I can say it was a Tuesday.
Okay.
By the way, by this time, Tuesday the 29th, how much contact did you had with the Attorney General about this investigation? How many times? Let's first of all how many times did you talk to him by phone?
Between phone calls and text messages, it had to be somewhere 15 to 20 times range over that 3.5, 4 week period.
Yeah. So that'd be 15 or 20 times that you were in contact with the Attorney General about the case, correct? And leading up to the 29th. And would you agree that you really actively get involved on the 3rd of September?
Oh, I'm sorry, one more time?
Roughly the 3rd.
The 3rd?
Yes. Remember the billing records, the first thing you billed is September 3rd.
Yes, sir, that was a typo. The date that I actually went out there was on 9/4.
All right. So can we say that those 15 to 20 times that you're in personal contact about this case with the Attorney General was 15 to 20 times in the days between the 3rd and the 29th of September?
I think that's accurate.
All right. And how many of those do you think they were personal phone calls?
I'm sorry, what?
How many of those 15 to 20 times were phone calls?
I would have to...
Roughly, just approximately.
Say maybe 7 to 10 times.
All right. How many of them were personal visits?
I didn't have any personal visits during that time.
During that time, you had the first meeting that you described when you were hired. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I had the 8/26, the 9/4 day, and then throughout the month of September, I didn't meet any more in person.
Okay. And by the middle of it, he is communicating with you by a particular type of encrypted app. Is that right?
Mostly through cell phone, text, and then I was asked to download the Signal app, and I don't even think we had a conversation on the Signal app, maybe. I had that and then my cell phone.
Now, did the Attorney General, you did give the Attorney General advance notice that you were going to be going out on the 29th and serving subpoenas?
Yes, sir.
Had you sent him any preliminary list of who you were serving them on?
No, sir.
Had you told him approximately how many you were going to serve?
No, sir.
How many were you planning to serve?
I believe there were 4 in person. There were the banks who were kind of the ones that were being accused in that second referral of this bank fraud deal.
All right. And so the email subpoenas that you sent out had to do with Nate Paul's referral number 1? Is that correct?
The emails that I sent out?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Those subpoenas.
Yes, sir.
And then the subpoenas you served in person had to do with referral number 2. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. And when you took, would you just tell us in your own words, recite to us how you served those subpoenas?
We went to 2 banks.
Yeah, let me stop you there just a second. In each of these banks that you went to, did you identify yourself as a special prosecutor for the Attorney General's office?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And Mr. Wynn was with you at each one, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you attempt at each of these banks to do some interviews of the people you served them on?
Just talking to them, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And giving the subpoena.
And did you talk to each of these people during that, in some cases, a little bit about why you were there in terms of the case?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you were there about a case Mr. Paul contended was a mortgage fraud case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was a case in which he wanted you to subpoena also or investigate a federal bankruptcy judge, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then did you conduct an interview of the husband of a court deputy during one of these services of subpoena?
There was I wasn't serving a subpoena. I don't believe it was. I was trying to talk to him.
All right, that was an interview without serving a subpoena. Without giving the person's name, unless counsel asked for it, and I think it's in the records, without giving the person's name, who did you go interview? Was it the husband of a deceased deputy?
Yes, I think she was a clerk of the court.
And where had the deceased clerk of the court been a clerk?
She was I forget which court it was. It was the court basically where this first initial referral came out of, the search warrant that came out of that made the basis of the first complaint.
So she was a previous clerk for the federal magistrate?
Yes.
And who were you talking to, her husband?
Her husband.
And did you have some suspicions or so that made you inquire as to how she died or anything?
I think there was I can't think of the right word, but there was like an indication that maybe there was some kind of foul play or something there with this clerk.
Now Mr. Cammack, that had been a suggestion to you by Mr. Wynn, had it not?
And Mr. Paul.
And Mr. Paul.
Yes.
So Mr. Paul tells you a deputy at the court that issued the warrant that I'm complaining about died under suspicious circumstances. That's what Mr. Paul tells you, right?
I don't remember those his exact words, but it was something like that.
And maybe not that tone of voice, right?
Yes, sir.
But my point is, he actually led you to somebody that you in good faith interviewed, making you think that this husband might tell you suspicious circumstances of his deceased wife's death, correct?
Objection, leading and argumentative.
Is that correct?
Sustained.
Thank you. Now, my only point was you issued those two. You served those two, were they on the 29th to these two financial institutions?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember what the names of the two financial institutions were?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
All right. After you issued those subpoenas on the 29th, what happened?
I get back to Houston the following day, and I've received an email from, I think, Microsoft at that point, and then also an email from counsel for one of the banks saying, we need some credentials to...
And, of course, you had been saying all along to the Attorney General you wanted credentials, right?
Yes, sir.
Objection.
In order to take care of this particular problem. Is that right?
Excuse me. Third time. Objection leading. Both questions.
Sustained.
Well, when you how many conversations did you say you'd had with the Attorney General trying to get credentials for this kind of work?
I think 4 or 5.
All right. And then once you got those emails, were those emails, if you served them on the 29th, were you receiving those the day after you served them, or would you receive them all the same day that you served them? If you remember.
It would have been after, and you can't quote me on that exact day if it was the 30th, but I do remember receiving emails to the effect of units.
And then what was the next thing that happened in your relationship, in your conduct with this?
I got a cease and desist letter.
From whom?
From a gentleman named Mark Penley.
What did you do?
I responded to his cease and desist and said, okay.
And then did you do anything else besides respond to it? Did you reach out to anyone?
I reached out to Mr. Paxton once I got the cease and desist.
Were you successful in reaching him? How did you reach out?
I believe I called him.
All right. Were you able to talk to him?
I don't remember if it was that, if I spoke with him that day.
Did you also get a visit from federal law enforcement?
I did get, the US Marshals showed up at my office down in Houston.
Yeah. Do you remember what day that was?
Maybe October 1st.
Who was the first? Federal marshals were at your office?
They came by my office.
Who was the first person you contacted?
I called Mr. Paxton, blowing his phone up. Like, why are there US Marshals at my office?
How many times you called him?
Probably 5, 6 times, text messaging, and he answered his phone.
On the 5th time?
One of the times.
All right. And how often were you calling him until you got him?
Well, my secretary comes back and says, there's US Marshals here at the office, and I'm like, what? What's going on? And then I just start blowing his phone up until he answers it.
In your mind, certainly, had you done anything wrong that would merit anybody in law enforcement coming to see you in your mind?
No, sir.
All right. So the first person you called was the Attorney General?
Yes, sir.
And when you got him, what did he say?
He told me don't talk to him without counsel.
So he told you to get a lawyer before you talk to them?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you talk about the merits or anything of why they were there? Do this. What did you say to him, and what did he say to you?
Yeah, I said there's US Marshals at my office. What is this all about? And he told me, well, don't talk to him without a lawyer. I don't know what it's about either.
Okay.
And then hung up the phone.
He hung up the phone, or you hung up?
I don't remember. We both hung up the phone and
Okay.
went out there and greeted those gentlemen and went to my conference room and I said, hey, with all due respect, I can't talk to you without having a lawyer present, but can I have a business card? And I got the business card from those two gentlemen, took a picture of it, and I sent it to Mr. Paxton and said, these are the guys who showed up at my office, and that was that.
All right. What's the next thing that happened to you in connection with this?
I had sent my invoice back to Mr. I got a cease and desist letter, and I sent my invoice back over, and then I get an email the following day from Jeff Mateer.
And what did Mr. Tiers tell you?
They sent me another cease and desist letter, accusing me of crimes and all this other stuff. I'm like, whoa, what is going on here?
All right. And then at some time, did you go back to Mr. Vassar with the request to be paid, and did he responded to you?
They said there was no valid contract, and so I sent him the contract that I had for Mr. Paxton.
And all along, had you believed you had a valid contract?
Yes, sir.
And when you sent him the valid contract, was it signed? Who was it signed by?
It was signed by Mr. Paxton.
The one you sent back to him?
The one that they said that I didn't have a valid contract. I sent him the contract that I had for Mr. Paxton, with Mr. Paxton's signature on it.
Was Mr. Paxton's signature on the one you sent them?
The one that I sent them, I'm sorry.
When did you get a contract that had Mr. Paxton's signature?
I believe I got that on September 28th.
How had that happened?
So this was about the time that I'm getting ready to go with the subpoenas, and I still don't have my badge or credentials, and I was talking with Michael Wynn about it, and I was kind of frustrated at the time because I'm like, well, I'm supposed to go serve subpoenas and do this work. I don't even have my credentials, which my contract, don't have a badge. I don't have a governmental email address. And Mr. Wynn asked me, I guess, well, send me over your agreement. And I had planned on coming out to Austin the following day to come do these subpoenas. So I get out to Austin to go over to...
Now, let's put a day on it. What day do you get to Austin?
That was on the 28th.
All right, the 28th would be a Monday.
September 28th.
All right. And you arrive in Austin on the 28th, and what happened when you got, who do you go to see?
I'm meeting over at Nate Paul's office, and Michael Wynn is there.
All right. And what do you find when you get there?
My contract was there on the table.
And was it signed by whom?
Myself and Mr. Paxton.
Had you ever seen a contract signed by Mr. Paxton before September the 28th?
No, sir.
And in fact, all this time that you thought you had a valid contract, did you have a contract that was only signed by you?
I sent Mr. Vassar my signed copy back on the 4th and said, please send me back an executed contract. And I never got one. You know, I didn't know.
I just want to make sure real quickly here. You got back from you sent Mr. Vassar your contract, which had only your signature on the 4th. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then, from then until the 28th in Mr. Paul's office, did you ever see a contract that had the Attorney General's signature on it?
No, sir.
And when was it that you complained to the Attorney General, if you did, that you did not have a contract signed by him? When was the last time you did that before you saw it on the 28th?
I don't recall the exact date, but I had told him about a badge, you know, credentials, and email address, and so I just never received it.
On the morning of the 28th before you left, did you have a conversation to go up there? Early in the morning, did you have a conversation with Mr. Wynn?
I did.
And what did you tell Mr. Wynn?
I believe he had texted me the night before and said, you know, because I was frustrated, so I was telling him I don't have my credentials, like meaning my contract or my badge or any of that. So he texted me. I think I was already sleeping, and he said, "Send me your contract." So I wake up at like 5 in the morning, and I send it to him.
The contract you sent to Mr. Wynn early that morning,
About 5 a.m.
5 a.m., had only your contract, your signature?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then how soon after that was it that you arrived in Mr. Wynn's office where they had a contract signed by the Attorney General?
We went to Nate Paul's office, not
Okay.
Mr. Wynn's office, and we had to be around lunchtime maybe.
And you walked in and saw what?
My contract was just there on the deal signed.
Signed by the Attorney General?
Yes, sir.
And that was the first time you'd ever seen one
Yes, sir.
signed by him. All right. Now, finally, when things got a little hectic for you after that, did they not? After the 29th and 30th of September?
Yes, sir.
When was the next time that you saw the Attorney General?
I don't remember the exact date. I'm sorry.
On the 29th or the 30th, did you see him? Or the 1st of October or the 2nd October or any of those dates? Did you have occasion to have contact with the Attorney General again?
I did. I just don't
When?
remember the exact date. It was after I had received the second cease and desist letter from Mr. Mateer.
And what were the circumstances of you seeing him?
I got a phone call from Michael Wynn, and he had said, "Hey, I need you to come out to Austin." It was like last minute, and it was in the evening. And I'm like, he's like, "You need to come out to Austin and come over to Nate Paul's house."
What time of day were you supposed to get there?
I don't remember what time I got there. Maybe it was in the evening. My sun was going down.
All right. And so when you drove up there to Austin, to Mr. Paul's house, did you have any idea why you were there?
I mean, I figured because at this point, I've gotten a cease and desist letter. I've gotten basically the rug pulled out from under me. Like, I'm going and working, everything is okay. I'm getting affirmation that everything is good. And then all of a sudden, I've got cease and desist letters, US Marshals showing up at my office. And I'm trying to figure out, how did we go from that to this? And I'm just trying to get answers about what's going on, because I still don't know. And so that's what I figured this was all about. So yeah, I get out to the house. I drive to Nate Paul's house, tell my fiance at the time, like, "Hey, I'm going out here. I'll be back later." And then, yeah, I get out there.
So what happens when you walk in? Could you basically describe the meeting?
Yeah, I go in, and Michael Wynn is there, Nate Paul is there, and Mr. Paxton's there.
Where's Mr. Paxton and what's he doing?
Shook his hand, and he was like on the phone, and then just spent most of the time just out on the balcony on the phone.
Was there anything surprising about him being there to you? Did you know he was
I
going to be
didn't
there?
know he would be there.
Pardon me?
I didn't know he was going to be there.
And then, what was the circumstance, the scene? How was everybody dressed? What was everybody doing? All that jazz.
I mean, I was dressed in a suit because I thought it was, for business, and, they were dressed casually. I think Michael had a suit on. Mr. Paxton had running shoes and running shorts on or something, just casual.
Did they talk to you? Why were you there?
So while Mr. Paxton was out on the balcony, Michael Wynn and Nate Paul, they were just kind of commiserating about all the stuff that had happened in that last few days. And when Mr. Paxton came in, as I was going to leave, I think I was there maybe an hour, he had mentioned, that Mr. Penley didn't have any authority to tell me to stop working. He told him to stand down and just to continue to work on this report.
At that time, you say he came in. Was he outside the room but there when you arrived?
He was in the house and then went outside on the balcony or in the back and was on the phone the entire time.
All right, after Mr. Paxton told you that, how long were you there?
Oh, I mean, I left.
So what did you think? What was the meeting about?
Just a lot of talking about, how I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe what these guys are doing. The fact that Mr. Penley had reached out to Michael Wynn asking for documents, even though Mr. Paxton had told him not to work on the case and this type of stuff. But I still left there very, in my mind, I'm like, hey, I got 2 cease and desist letters. I'm not doing any more work. And I haven't been paid for anything. And so I'm just kind of listening, trying to get answers on what I should be doing.
So did you wonder on the way home why the hell you had been there?
Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. That was annoying to have to drive out a 3-hour drive for an hour meeting and then come back.
When is the next time you saw the Attorney General about this matter?
I think within the next couple of days, I got a call to come out to his office and meet with him and some of his staff.
And what did they want?
Mr. Paxton wanted me to meet Brent Webster.
Brent Webster was did you know who he was by that time?
No, sir.
Did you know what position he now had?
I knew when I got out there that he was, I guess, the first assistant.
And when and where did y'all meet? What did you do? Just walk us through it.
So we met in the conference room over at the Attorney General's office with 2 other individuals, and Mr. Paxton wanted me to just debrief what I had learned, what the first referral was about.
What did you tell him?
What I had done. I spent the first few minutes kind of just venting my frustration about how I felt like I had been treated to that point, still not having any clear answers. And, the fact that I had a whole entire life before of all of this, a docket, I had clients. I mean, I didn't ask for any of this. You guys reached out to me to come do a job, and then now you're pulling the rug out from under me, and I'm getting cease and desist letters, and now my name's being thrown through the mud in the media, and it's a totally new world to me. So, I let that out and just told them, what we kind of talked about here today, right now, that I'd issued subpoenas. I had this PowerPoint presentation where they showed me this. And
what did they say? What did he say? What did the Attorney General say?
I believe he asked me, or Brent Webster asked me, to send him any documents that I had sent the Attorney General, to email it to him.
Did the Attorney General apologize to you?
I don't think he apologized to me, no.
And then did y'all stay there, or did you go somewhere else?
No, I left there. Went back to Houston.
And then when was the next time that you saw the Attorney General?
Yeah, the next time, and I'm sorry, but I just don't recall the exact date, but it was within that week. I get a call from, that last meeting, it was like, hey, you need to, just continue to work on the report. Everything is fine. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, right, I'm not doing anything else. And then a few days go by, and I get a call to come back out and meet with him, just like a very short notice, maybe even the same day, to come out to Austin again.
You drove up again?
drove up again.
You recall what that date is?
No, sir. It had to be the first week of October sometime, though.
All right. And then where did you go when you drove up?
I went to the AG's office again.
And then who was there?
Brent Webster and Mr. Paxton.
And what happened there?
I thought we were going to meet to talk about the contract and what is going on, and but instead, you know, they were like, well, let's not meet here in the office, and they walked me over to a Starbucks outside of the office to have a meeting.
Did you ask why?
No, but it was uncomfortable. It was not professional to me at all.
So when you go to the Starbucks, who all was there?
Mr. Paxton, Brent Webster, and then a couple other gentlemen who I don't know.
And what happened at that meeting?
At that meeting, Mr. Webster did all the talking and told me, well, in fact, your contract is not any good anymore. You know, stop working, don't do anything at all. I asked him, okay, well, what about, you know, paying me?
Do you recall exactly how you put it about whether you were going to get paid? Did you put the amount in there?
I think I ballparked it, and I said, what about my $14,000 invoice? And he's like, well, you're going to have to eat that invoice. I've had to eat $40,000 invoices.
Webster said he had eaten a $40,000.
That sticks out in my mind, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Why does that stick out in your mind?
Just because it was offensive.
Yeah. What was the Attorney General doing during this whole conversation?
He was just listening in.
Did one of them tell you your contract was now terminated?
What Mr. Webster said.
How long did you were at the Starbucks?
15 minutes, 20 minutes tops.
Did you feel better knowing that Mr. Webster says he had eaten a $40,000 debt before? Did that make you feel any better?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
How did it make you feel?
I don't know if I believed him or not, but I know it was offensive to me.
And then what happens? Anything you remember? What happened then?
Yeah, they left the Starbucks and tried to get in the car and drive off. I said, excuse me, can I get a ride back to my car?
So these guys take you to, are you saying that these guys took you over to a Starbucks outside the office, terminated your contract, told you you weren't going to get paid, and then drove off, and if you hadn't said, wait, I got my car, they'd have left you in the street?
That's what it looked like.
Pass it.
Mr. Cogdell.